Alright guys, Tactical way back again today, hopefully enjoying your Wednesday so far, and yesterday evening I made a video on the gentleman's agreement currently in play, or at least being considered by the professional community to be removed from play. That is the ATS Auto Tac Sprint, Merc foregrip snaking being discussed. Florida and Dallas weren't particularly keen to go ahead with it, and then Clayster came up with a clarification tweet and everything kicked off. Like ZooMaa, FaZe's analyst, was replying to Clay, and Abizi came into the discussion, was kind of like calling Clay a clown. Then Simp was subtweeting Clay on another tweet thread, so pretty entertaining stuff. We'll have to go through it today. Intrigued to hear your thoughts again in the comment section below. Not exactly sure where I stand on the entire issue. Really, my conclusion is that we need to step up the professionalism in the professional Call of Duty community, and hopefully Activision will have the power in future to actually go to Infinity Wards and have these discussions behind the scenes, because this really shouldn't be a thing that the professionals are still having to decide in a CDL situation when we're now in a franchise league, right? So like if you guys enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. This is the tweet from Credit CDL until a couple of days ago. Then yesterday it was noticed just quickly that Saints is scrimming instead of Spart on the Los Angeles Guerrillas team, and in this scrim it didn't look like any of these players were using the Merc foregrip. So after all this happened, Clayster came out with this tweet: "Wonder who we're going to be at a scrimmage in the upcoming days. AMS bang my line." And this is another one of these classic situations when, you know, part of the professional community decides to GA X, Y, and Z, which means the pros agree between them that they're not going to use a certain thing because it, you know, affects competitive integrity, or it allows, it reduces the skill gap, is what a common thing which is said is, which is pretty much what they say about all of these three things that we will discuss in coming minutes. But of course, Clayster and the Empire didn't necessarily agree to that initially, and you know what that means. The pros, the other pros decide, look, we're not going to scrim you, and you're added to the blacklist basically, and Empire just says, like, you know, who are we going to be able to scrim in the coming days? So then he comes out with this tweet: IMO, GA snaking, why is it allowed again this year? Keep auto tac sprint, people have been using it all year, teams are on an uneven number of events played on it, so it wouldn't be fair. GA 10mm instead of Merc, ranges the issue if it's still broken. GA Merc foregrip. So this was Clayster's initial opinion on the matter. It really is an interesting situation, right? Because a lot of pros are saying that, look, we need to get rid of these things because it reduces the skill gap. Merc foregrip is the most one discussed because, you know, if you're a bad player, you can just hip fire and get easy kills with it. You can be mantling and still get kills, which is kind of unfair. Snaking, I suppose, allows, so that is like where you crouch, crouch, kind of go prone, then stand up again behind cover. Makes it difficult for the other player to see you. I guess technically you could argue there's some sort of movement skill gap in that some people are better at snaking than others. But most pros would, I suppose, argue that, look, it allows worse players to do better by abusing this mechanic. And then you've got ATS, which a lot of people would say is in a similar boat, which is where I kind of misinterpreted this initially, especially what FaZe Clan are saying. Like, a lot of people are saying regarding auto tac sprint is that it allows players with bad movement to have better movement by automatically running this mechanic, where instead of having to double tap the left analog stick twice, you can just move it forwards and it kind of does the movement for you. That's not really a mechanic we've seen in the past, and I can understand pros saying that, like, we'd prefer this not to be in the game, so that we, as better players than the average, can actually use our mechanically better ability to get ahead of the game, rather than just using this this inherent feature which allows worse players to have better movement, right? Because ADS really helps you with slide cancelling and this kind of stuff. More difficult if you don't have it, right? So it does increase the movement skill gap in that sense. And as Clayster says, or as Parasite says, the game shouldn't do a game mechanic for you. The only reason the setting is cool is because it helps your controller lifespan. So this is when we get the interesting replies. EasyMac says, why not GA all four things? Why is it some sort of weird package? RST says, what's the cons to auto tac sprint not being able to walk whenever you want, which is kind of fair enough. Simp says, let's bring back the skill gap by getting rid of it effectively. And yeah, okay, so we get this initial bit of, like, a little bit of spice here on Twitter. Okay, so it starts off like this. Then Tom Ryan, so Ogre2 over at Florida, replies that, look, I'm trying to wrap my head around the fact that players are trying to self-ban a control setting built into the game. Imagine Halo players whining about bumper jump because it was easy to jump and shoot now. I guess you could also argue this is a similar thing in terms of, like, people having scarves makes it easier to jump. Then again, the fact that this setting does allow you to just get around what you would typically have to do, and, you know, certainly won't be coming back in the next Call of Duty, I would imagine, auto tac sprinting. You know, you could say that it's a little bit unfair and we can get rid of it. I can see both sides of the argument here, to be honest. Most of the pros are against it. So this is what EasyMac comes out and says, and this is where it kicks off, right? So Merc, he gives the reasons why we should be GAing these things. Merc, snaking, auto tack sprint, and honestly I really do think that that Clayster's argument, as we see right here, that teams haven't played the same number of events, is honestly a really good argument, as we'll go on to in a second, because, you know, if teams have been able to abuse this more than other teams, is that not fair? Like, do we have to wait another couple of events to the point where every team has played the same amount and then GA it? Like, maybe it seems a bit unfair if every team hasn't played the same amount of events, because it's not a typical thing we see in the Call of Duty calendar, right? So, okay, so EasyMac says, like, this is the biggest BS in the game, 10mm should be out. This tweet was since made unavailable, but I was quick on the draw and I screenshotted it last night. So then he says that the not everyone has played the same amount is BS. Would you agree that 2 events in when everyone will have played the same amount? No, you won't. So yeah, EasyMac saying in the FaZe analyst that, look, Clayster, you guys are never going to agree to this even in. But then Clayster says, like, okay, we'll happily agree to it in 2 tournaments that everyone's played the same amount. What about that? So yeah, pretty interesting stuff. Then of course we have the whole argument regarding snaking. So yeah, it continues on down here. We get this whole discussion. EasyMac says, obviously your opinions are biased. This whole bias thing is insane. You'll have been using it since launch weekend. We literally put it on because we saw you guys were playing with it. How is it biased when there's been players that have been using it since tournament started and we haven't been? So Clayster is saying that they only really caught on later and it was actually the Atlanta FaZe guys using it. This is the auto tack sprint earlier than them. Then Abizi comes out saying, Clay, are you stupid? Me, that's Simp, that's Maniac, have never used it. Celium and Priester didn't start using it until 2 weeks ago. Get a grip. Someone's lying to y'all. Go watch your matches from the LAN tournaments, brother. I'm not gonna lie if I'm using a setting or not, homie. You actually look like a complete clown right now. EasyMac, how do you know our settings? Just asking though. So Clayster going on a mad one here, saying that these guys have been using a setting which they claim not to have been using. And yeah, it's all really interesting. And we get this reply from Simp saying, apparently my teammates are lying to me about using tack sprint, regarding what Clayster says about his teammates actually apparently have been using it longer than him. Then we have the whole snaking discussion of, you can see this clip here from the Seattle versus New York match. See ZooMaa kind of laying down behind the on the P5 St. Petrograd right here, then standing up again and laying down and standing up again. But this is kind of something which, okay, is he overly, yeah, are you going to say he's overly abusing this mechanic right here? Or is he just like, okay, he's weak and he's laying down to reload his gun? Like, what is the difference, right, between snaking and between just tactical use of movement, I suppose you could argue. And as he says here, people talking about snaking, what do people want me to do when I'm one shot and have to reload? Stand on the desk. Also, the whole damn league snakes, get over it. Snake or be snaked. I've accepted that. Not my problem. So with all this drama going down, we then have to come to some sort of conclusion and decide what really are the next steps, right? So Octane says, like us watching Atlanta for 6 months, listen man, Pat, that's it. If Pat was back, that's Paddy P. Aches, he would never have let Merk 4-grip slide. Tried it for weeks, bro. Too many people want to push for their benefit and not for the game's competitive benefit. Sad stuff. We have this then from Slasher. So they were talking Slasher being the GA king, Octane trying to get this man back in the game. He then replies, what happened now? Didn't everyone come to their senses and finally get rid of some of the BS? All that matters is that the majority agrees. And then this is the TLDR from EasyMac. And I think really the second point is where I wanted to draw some conclusions to this video, right? Because, okay, he reckons all 4 should be gone. You had to sprint, dash, dip, duck, and dive in every other game. Why are we having the game play for us now? Which is kind of fair enough. The timing may be off, but when is it ever going to be perfect? You could argue in 2 weeks' time, or when in 2 events' time, when everyone's played the same event, then that would be the perfect timing. Then again, you could say that it's too close to the end of the season, so then it's not perfect anymore. So I can see what he means about that. But this really is the key one to me, because this just looks so unprofessional, right? Like, pros are chatting on Twitter about whether they should get rid of something from the game. Not really anything that has to be dealt with in other communities, right? This would go to the CDL. The pros would be having the discussion with the CDL and Activision, and they would have the influence to go to Infinity Ward and say, look, overnight, we want this change. It's going to happen in the CDL rule set. It's going to go down. And as I talked about yesterday, like, this causes issues further down in terms of the amateur community and, you know, down to the CDL playlist and game battles and this kind of stuff. Because if it's just GA'd, then what's stopping AMs using it in tournaments? There's nothing really, right? So it has to get to the point where, in order to be a proper professional league where the pros are playing the same game as the amateurs and other guys are, that the CDL has to be implementing this into the CDL rules via Infinity Wards. And maybe that's not even possible, as we'll look at from a Morks tweet in a second, but we need a committee to make actual non-biased decisions that are better for the league. And this is the issue, right? Because EasyMac and all the guys that we talked about today are biased to their own personal situation. I can understand that EasyMac and the FaZe guys are pretty happy to get rid of it, because then those 5 players probably believe that they might have the best movement in the entire game. They can then get a better advantage by not using it, by then letting other players that don't have as good movement using ADS to kind of catch up in terms of movement. So it's understandable that FaZe want to get rid of it. Maybe if you're Dallas Empire, like Shotzi and Co are very good with it, but also could be probably very good without it as well. Maybe even their skill gap goes up, but then maybe Clayster and Crimsix are like, yeah, do we want to get rid of it and let FaZe get that kind of theoretical advantage by all of their players being cracked out, right? So at the end of the day, everyone's biased to their own personal situation. So of course, it's impossible to make a decision if there's not some sort of overall committee. And as Austin says, is a majority good enough? Do we need 10-2? Do we need 12-0? Like, what is the point where we decide that things get rid of, right? And where we do GA stuff. And as Mork says here, Merc, ATS, 10mm should all be gone, but seriously, we need the league to get a competent team to make all the decisions. So sick of dealing with this BS as a player. So much selfishness that goes on with these decisions and votes, and it's laughable the league can't make the game studio do anything. We heard about this earlier season from JCap saying that, look, I think it was JK, maybe Paddy P or something, said that there really isn't the communication channels between Activision and Infinity Ward to even get this stuff done, which is just incredible, right? Like, you'd thought in a franchise league, this finally would have been dealt with, but no, months and months of feedback all to be ignored, then it's left to the players to run the show. So unprofessional and sad. So yeah, just to finish off with then, it does look like everything we discussed today has been gentlemen's agreemented. 10 teams agreed yesterday, not sure what happened with Dallas, Florida in the end, and, you know, it does get to the point where, look, these guys like Dallas, for example, Florida, if they don't agree to the rest of the league's gentleman's agreement, then they're not going to get any practice, right? All the teams are going to be like, no, we're not playing against you. And of course, I guess they don't want to play against them, because if Dallas are using the ATS, then it creates an unfair game. So I can kind of understand it, but at the same time, it just forces them to agree in the end, to be honest. Every single year we get some sort of discussion like this, and at the end of the day, everyone just agrees and gets on with their life again. That just tends to be how it works, but maybe it's not the best thing to do, right? So Shotzi just confirmed they're all G8. I'll leave you guys with that clip to finish out the video. So lucky if you guys enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new as always. I've been intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Really interesting bit of drama that went down on Twitter. Even with the franchise league, I didn't think this would be quite the case anymore, that we got all these back and forths, but we still are having it, so it was interesting to see. But yeah, I wonder where you guys fall on the issue. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Stream, I'm gonna say it again, man. Fuck it. Alright, so listen. Auto tax range G8, yes. 10mm is G8. And wait, what? Fucking 10 mil. Auto tax range G8. Merc foregrip is G8, and snaking. I don't know what we were saying. 10mm. What the fuck am I on about?
You're correct, bro.
Yeah.